John Tapscott,
And I'm Alex Tapscott.
and this is What's on Tap. Alex, you just got back from Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, giving a big speech, I see.
Mm-hmm.
Here, actually have a copy of it. I'm sure the speech was good, but the part that I'd love to see is apparently you debated Nouriel Roubini, the notorious crypto blockchain hater, I think would be a fair statement. And also, the governor of the Bank of Pakistan was there. It sounds like ganging up on you a bit, but I got an independent report that you killed it. So I can't wait to get my hands on that thing. But can you tell us a bit about the context and what was going on? Big sovereign wealth funds in the audience, right?
That's right. The event was hosted by Masic, which is a large family office in Saudi Arabia. It's their annual Masic Investment Forum. And I was on stage with Reza Bakir, who is the governor of the Bank of Pakistan, and Nouriel Roubini, who, as you pointed out, is a macroeconomist and also a well-known crypto skeptic. And we had it out. It was a really great debate. Cordial to a point. I spent some time with Mr. Roubini, Professor Roubini, before and after. He's a lovely guy, but on stage we really dropped the gloves. So it was quite fun to get into it. I simply made the case that this technology is very important and it's beginning to have a big impact on a lot of new industries like financial services, like art and collectibles, like gaming, supply chains, and so forth. And that digital assets are a very important innovation that are going to change the world, and have already started to in some pretty interesting ways. And Mr. Roubini, you rehashed some well-worn and easily disprovable critiques of Bitcoin and digital assets. They're used by criminals. That's not true, at least not in the same extent as cash is. But 15 basis points of all transactions in crypto is for illicit purposes, compared to about 2 to 5% of all GDP. He made the point that Bitcoin is a massive energy waster, as are all other blockchains. Bitcoin is based on renewables, which is growing quickly, but also most other new blockchains are proof of stake. He said proof of stake is not yet to be proven. Well, there's hundreds of billions of dollars of value that's already secured on proof of stake networks, not to mention hundreds of applications in a wide range of industries. Anyway, so he kind of went through the greatest hits list. Could have been the same critiques you would have heard in 2016, honestly. So it was easy to swat them down, but a fun discussion nonetheless. And the talk itself was really great. It's interesting to travel to different parts of the world and get different local perspectives. Mr. Bakir, who's the governor of the Bank of Pakistan, had a very interesting view on all of this, which is that it's true that the Bank of Pakistan has a mandate to support economic growth in the country, but one of its mandates is also to prevent dollarization and to prevent capital flight. And this is something we don't actually think about in places like Canada and the US. So just to go through those, dollarization is basically the replacing of the local currency for dollars, typically, or some other currency. So when he talks about dollarization, he's not only talking about US dollar stablecoins, but even Bitcoin itself replacing, or other crypto assets replacing the local currency. When a central bank loses control of its currency, it loses control of the levers that allow it to manage the economy. And then the other issue is around capital flight, which is that a lot of emerging markets are on pretty fragile footing, and they require capital to remain in the country. If it leaves the country, then it can be destabilizing. And it was just an interesting reminder of how fortunate we are in places like Canada and the US to be able to talk about blockchain and digital assets the way we talk about the internet, right? As a new and important technology that, if we do this right, could put us on a footing to be a leader in Web3. We don't have to worry, I don't think, about Bitcoin replacing the Canadian dollar or the US dollar. But people in other parts of the world do actually think about that. So it was an interesting reminder, and maybe also a sign of just how I think, concerned, maybe even scared. A lot of people are about the impact of this technology, what it could mean for nation states and how they manage their own economies. I thought that was quite revealing and surprising. Maybe surprising only because I've been just trapped in Canada because of COVID, and I haven't had an opportunity to really travel the world. So it was great for that reason as well. You travel and you have eye-opening experiences.
Isn't it true? It was exhilarating for me to get out and do that 8-country speaking tour in the fall. But so what's going to happen in Pakistan? Did you get a sense of where it's going?
Yeah. So basically, like I think that this is the classic problem of conflating Bitcoin with all digital assets or Bitcoin with blockchain, right?
Yeah.
So, maybe they're concerned about Bitcoin being used as a way to move capital out of the country. But should they be as concerned about NFTs being used for digital identity, or should they be as concerned about securities tokens when all stocks and bonds are digital assets? Will those be banned as well? So it's sort of the law of unintended consequences, where the focus is only on these monetary assets, and that causes some confusion, because ultimately this is simply just a technology. It's a digital medium for value, and it can enable and support all assets. So you ban digital assets now, and you're going to end up preventing all sorts of economic opportunity and growth in the country. And honestly, will make it probably unworkable. Like, what happens when a big US bank like JP Morgan or Wells Fargo has its own stable coin, which it probably will this year? Are those going to be banned in Pakistan? JP Morgan's digital asset, Standard Chartered just launched a bond issuance on the Ethereum blockchain. Will those securities, that were created by a major global bank also be banned? Will pieces of art that use NFTs be banned? So there's all these things that I don't think they're actually thinking about that seriously. And it was interesting to me that there was a gentleman there who's the number 2 person at Saudi Arabia's largest private bank. So not the state bank, but a commercial bank, and he's a PhD from MIT by background and was an entrepreneur in the technology industry. He has a radically different view. Obviously, he's big on Web3 and sees the potential for this to be as big as the internet, if not bigger. Yeah. And it's just, again, interesting, even within these regions, within these conferences, within these discussions, to see such a wide range of opinion.
Sounds fascinating.
It really was. I'm really glad I did it. Yeah. It was a really worthwhile experience. And I see, it seems like I maybe missed out on some stuff happening on the home front. People, while I was out, keeping on trucking, there were some truckers in Ottawa up to something. And I heard also that they were using Bitcoin as a way to raise money for their cause. Proof once again that Bitcoin and all digital assets are evil. Is that right?
Yes, proof. So what's the next topic? No, seriously. By the way, for those outside of Canada who may be listening to Ted Cruz or watching Fox News about the trucker convoy, this is not what it seems. Yeah, for sure, there's a legitimate concern or a legitimate debate to be had about government mandates and how soon they should be lifted and so on. But what's happened is that this so-called Freedom Convoy has become sort of a magnet for all kinds of really extreme, and I mean extreme, sort of right-wing causes. So in the demonstrations in Ottawa with the truckers, you had Confederate flags, and there was a Nazi flag, and I know they blocked up the street right outside our condo here. And I walked out, having worn my mask in the elevator, onto the street, and I had a woman screaming at me because I was wearing a mask. So, and now, of course, we've got all kinds of international money, in particular coming from the U.S., that's trying to find a way to support this thing. So it's sort of a globalization of this extreme right. Somebody called it the Trumpization of Canada. Of course, Donald Trump has waded in, referring to Justin Trudeau as a sort of a left wing extremist. And so just get to the Bitcoin part. I have a physical publication here because I didn't have time to get my password working on this newspaper. But how Bitcoin bigwigs came to fundraise for Convoy. Group of 5 men are in control of 500K in donations. So Bitcoin investors want to orange pill the world and create a financial system outside of government regulation, and are rallying to join forces with and raise money for the Freedom Convoy protest in Canada. The group of 5 men will exclusively control the donations, which so far have reached around $500,000. And they say they want to show that cryptocurrencies are the libertarian money of the future. Orange pill, I guess, is a reference to the Matrix. Do you want the red pill or the blue pill? The red pill meaning that you get to see what's really happening. So, boy, trying to unpack that, and if I read the whole article, there are another 20 amazing kind of statements in here that do need to be unpacked. So, gentle listeners of What's on Tap, you can be forgiven to have some cognitive dissonance if you're reading that newspaper, and also noticing how Ukrainians are using Bitcoin to crowd fund the response to the Russian war. And then we've got Julian Assange, a big movement, basically. It's reported in Cointelegraph that has that's using Bitcoin to raise money for Julian Assange. They've raised $53 million to help with his legal costs and basically to fight for his freedom. So I don't know, what is this? The good, the bad, the ugly? Or it's kind of reminds me of the good old days with the internet, that it was used for criminals and for pornography and so on. And personally, I'm not suffering cognitive dissonance. I'm suffering deja vu. I mean, we've been through this thing so many times over a decade. And, but still, there's so much confusion, or else there are malicious forces that are attempting to, basically throw a pall of illegitimacy all over, not just Bitcoin, but the whole sort of blockchain revolution. But having been away and reflecting, having a sober reflection on all this, Alex, I'm sure it was sober if you're in Saudi Arabia.
Yes.
Any thoughts?
I think you and I are of like mind on this issue, which is that this is a technology. It doesn't have any moral agency, and it is a technology that enables a form of expression that I think wasn't as possible before, which is the ability to organize online around a common cause and to fund that initiative, which is why we saw this being used to fund dissidents in Belarus, why it's being used in the Ukraine to help fund militias, as you pointed out, why it's being used by people to help support Julian Assange, however you feel about him, a divisive figure, but someone, who people feel very strongly about. And obviously it's being used here to fund the convoy. I'm not as I just don't really feel very concerned about this. I do feel like occasionally I have to talk to people and to explain to them. I bet you that the people in the convoy are also using email, which is another permissionless networking technology. But we don't say email is bad because they're sending emails about coordinating refueling and of their trucks. So
well, in fact, there are a bunch of news articles saying they're using Telegram, which is an encrypted text environment. And for sure, they're using the good old-fashioned internet with GoFundMe and now other platforms to raise funds. So just to your point.
Yeah,
True enough.
I think that's interesting, but I also think that those are company platforms that are capable of being pressured into either doing supporting them or not, right? So, for example, the GoFundMe campaign has been suspended. I really think you've got to just, everyone needs to take a chill pill and realize that this is just a permissionless technology like email. Email itself is not owned by anyone, right? It is, an open source technology like Bitcoin. So these are things that people can use. Anyone can plug in, and anybody can use them, and it can be used for good, and it can be used for, if you disagree, something that's bad. And in our case, we're Canadians. We're here on the front lines. I find that this protest to be pretty repugnant and disruptive. And I actually think the Ottawa thing is a sideshow. The thing I'm way more freaked out about is the main commercial artery between Canada and the United States has been held up by a similar protest, handles $270 million of goods every single day, about a quarter of all trade between two countries. We're having our own little mini Suez Canal crisis out there in Detroit, and I think it's not getting the attention it deserves. So anyway, I digress. But when it comes to the technology itself, does that mean that I think that people shouldn't be able to use Bitcoin to fund legitimate things? No, of course not. I think that's the way it is, right?
Yeah. Well, and how about the point too about Bitcoin being different than cash, and that law enforcement can still do all kinds of things with it? I think we were discussing a recent story on this earlier today. Well, I think another point to be made on all this is that if you're smart law enforcement, Bitcoin is a lot better than cash. Cash, which, by the way, is the main technology, good old-fashioned dollars, main technology used by criminals. It's the foundation of organized crime, of the drug industry, of tax evasion, money laundering, and so on. And there was this really insane story about a young couple that was arrested for allegedly trying to launder $4 billion in Bitcoin that they purportedly stole from the Bitfinex exchange a few years ago. And these people made goofy rap videos and delivered a bunch of sort of lame inspirational talks online. And then they did some odd things. They stored their private keys in a spreadsheet on the cloud, and so on. But putting all that aside, it's sort of a pertinent point that the authorities have been tracing this, and that because of the metadata that's left, they've been monitoring the wallet address for years, waiting for something to happen.
Yeah.
And I know that you've looked into this. Thoughts on that?
Looked into it, yes. It was the most popular thing on Twitter yesterday. People incredulous that the masterminds behind one of the biggest hacks were these just absolutely ridiculous people. But let's putting that aside for a moment, just to look at the facts. So a bunch of Bitcoin was hacked from an account from an exchange back in 2016, and it sat in hundreds of different wallet addresses. All of these wallet addresses, as everyone knows, are available for anyone to see. They can be searched using a block explorer. You can see the balance. You can see when, any Bitcoin was moved in and out of them, et cetera, et cetera. And so they didn't move for years because, the second that the money was hacked, presumably law enforcement was monitoring them, sitting on them. And apparently recently, these folks were trying to move the money, to launder the money somehow, to get it out of the accounts. And that, combined with some other sleuthing, basically allowed law enforcement to figure out where the private keys were held. And so, basically the very strong passwords were located in like a Google Doc on Dropbox or something. I mean, I don't know. I can't remember the exact thing, but it was basically an Excel spreadsheet on a cloud server that, was like password protected with a weak password. So kind of ridiculous. The Justice Department, I think, got a warrant. It was a lawful search and seizure. And then they just took the Bitcoin. They just removed it from all of the accounts because they had access to the private keys, right? Just basically drained the accounts and then arrested these two youngish people. I don't want to say like they're kids who've made a mistake. These are people in their like mid 30s. So anyway, they're out on a $3 million bond. We'll see. Maybe there's other facts that will come to light. But it's just another reminder that the reason that only 15 basis points, so, a little more than 0.1% of all Bitcoin transactions are used for illicit purposes, way less than the average across cash and the broader economy. And that's because it has to be one of the worst mediums in the world for conducting criminal activity, because it is traceable, immutable, and trustworthy. The law enforcement doesn't need to say, it's not a he said, she said thing where they say they stole, they say they didn't. It's like, this is on the blockchain. This is the most authoritative source of information that the world has ever created ever. And there's no way to dispute its legitimacy. And that's it. That's the end of it. It's like, if it was there, it was there. So I think that another reminder to criminals, I don't want to provide advice to criminals, but Bitcoin's not good for criminals is kind of the point.
Yeah. Bottom line, advice for criminals: don't be a criminal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I don't want. Yeah, exactly. The title of our podcast: Advice for Criminals. I don't think so. Advice for criminals: don't be a criminal. Yeah. Exactly.
All right. Well, that's a sober note to end on.
Yes.
And, just some announcements. Our big event for the Enterprise Blockchain Revolution Global is returning April 21st, 22nd. Call it the Web3 Summit at the Metro Convention Center. And you can visit www.blockchainrevolutionglobal.com for more details about the event. Our new book, edited by yours truly, is Platform Revolution. I've written several of the pieces in there, and I think it's a terrific book. It's selling quite well, and it's available on Amazon now in hardcover and e-book editions. I noticed that somebody has also linked that book to my TED Talk, so that's that thing 5 years later is still growing at 3,000 views a day. So that should generate some traffic on the book as well. And our most recent webinar, Blockchain Food Safety and Sustainable Agriculture, is available on the Blockchain Research Institute YouTube channel. Of course, you can go to blockchainresearchinstitute.org or .com, and all of this material is there, or links to it are there. So, Alex, welcome back. I hope we both get out on the road soon. Again, who is it who said 99% of everything is just showing up? And we've all been showing up virtually over the last couple of years. Thankfully, it looks like the dust is settling, and we'll be able to show up physically. So back on the road again. Anyway, and to all of you listeners and viewers, we'll see you again next week for What's on Tap.